Storytelling is important in business, just like it's important in real life. Story is important because it's how we make sense of the world around us. Storytelling is essential. Storytelling is what bonds us. Stories are how we make sense of the world. Every single human being constructs their entire world with story. Stories resonate with us. Without story, we can't communicate and we can't understand. Even a loving embrace and a hug that gives you a deep, warm feeling is giving you a deep, warm feeling because you're putting that into a story in your mind about what that means to you. Stories connect in a way unlike any other information. You will communicate in a way that people not only understand, but care about. A data sheet or a PowerPoint presentation that isn't fueled by story is nothing to care about. A great story affects you. A great story affects you. A storyteller will know that their message is connecting with an audience because that audience will lean in. And when people lean in, they want to know more, they want to engage, and they want to act. Storytelling is important in business, just like it's important in real life. Stories are literally the bridge between people. The bridge between people. Storytelling is what bonds us. Stories are literally the bridge. Stories are how we make sense of the world. Good morning. I have a question for you to kick off this beautiful Friday. Do you think you need to be Steven Spielberg to master the art of storytelling? Think again. You don't have to be. And that is the purpose of this stream, this weekly clinic. It's an opportunity for you to come and get tips and ideas, ask questions about storytelling in business, not in the movies. So I'm Matthew Widget. I'm the CEO, founder, and principal consultant for Go Narrative. We are passionate about helping you tap into the vein of power that storytelling is to us as humans. To tap into the ability to not only improve your communications, but to shape the world that you're in. And that's one of the most amazing things about storytelling is this combination of us putting ourselves in our own story every single day, our loves, our hates, our missions, our objectives, our jobs, our desires, our fears, all of this stuff that we go through every day. That sounds like quite a crazy day, doesn't it? at least one of those things every day. We're putting ourselves in the middle of this story that we construct in our heads. We tell ourselves stories. We think our memories are perfect, but they're stories of what happened that are influenced by ourselves, by other memories, by other people, by conversations with people. Have you ever had a friend or a very old friend or a family member say, do you remember blah, 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 or you're talking about blah, 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 and they say, well, it was this thing happened, wasn't it? And you think to yourself, I think so. And then it starts to go from there. And maybe you did remember, or maybe you've inadvertently triggered the storytelling of your brain to start building out something and to believe what they said. We tell stories about our beliefs. We tell stories about what is right, what is wrong in the world. There's so much power in storytelling. And if you're not tapping into that power in business, you are leaving money on the table. Whether that's being a career person, leaving money in the shape of promotions, job opportunities, or it's you're running your own business, leaving money on the table with deals or business opportunities, partnerships. And quite frankly, leaving money on the table is bigger than this idea of money. What is money? Money is an idea. Money is an idea. We agree on the value of $100 bill. I had a conversation with one of my boys just the other day, and he said, how much is this really, why is this worth, it was a $5, it wasn't $100. Why is this $5? What makes this $5? Say, unlike say a $10 or a $20, they kind of seem the same. Because we attribute value to that piece of paper. And that piece of paper, most of the time when we think about dollars and cents, we're thinking about bank accounts or contracts, lines on a deal, right? So it's often not that $5 that my son was holding. So it's all about value that we ascribe to it, whether it's a physical $5 or it's a $5 in his bank account, right? And transferring that from our bank account to his bank account for his pocket money, for example. We attribute value. And so when you're leaving money on the table, you're leaving value on the table. And so storytelling is this immense, powerful vein for you to tap into. And that's what this clinic is all about. That's what we do every single day, helping our clients, helping ourselves by using this power of storytelling. And I've spent some time recently pondering, why do I find this whole topic so interesting? I started with today, right? But I rapidly found myself going back in time. What was it? Where did it start? Where did it begin? It wasn't that first. It wasn't when I left corporate America. It wasn't when I got that job. It wasn't when I did this. It wasn't when I moved to America. It was going back into the depths of time. And each one of those steps, it got a bit murkier and a bit murkier. And when I got back to my childhood, deep in the depths of the past, I started thinking about some of the experiences I had, the experiences at university, deciding what courses to take, how to change my direction, the conversations I had with my tutors or my lecturers to navigate through this challenging experience university was for me. Or after university, when I was starting the workforce and being able to land a full-time position at Intel Corporation during the fallout from the .com and the 2001 bubble burst. The millennium bug and .com and all of that stuff. Fallout. And I managed to get offered a full-time job when there was a headcount freeze, there was attrition going on all around the place. And I managed to somehow, in what I said, position myself in a way that had my hiring manager say, I want you on my team. You're going to add value to my team, right? That idea of value, leaving value on the table. I story made a situation where Rich saw me as value that would be left on the table if you didn't hire me. So I was looking at these experiences and I recognized there was this pattern. And then I started looking a bit further back to when I was even younger. It's always a risky one. Got in a lot of trouble when I was growing up. We moved around. We moved countries. We moved from the UK to the US, back to the UK. We lived in multiple places in England. I lived in Scotland. We lived in the United States on the West Coast, in Arizona, in California, in Oregon, and now in Washington. But that's a different story that happened later. I moved around a lot, sort of 1.5 years during my formative years, almost like an army brat, but for technology. So all this moving around, all this fresh slates, right? But at the same time, I seem to screw it up every time, I seem to get in trouble. And in this getting in trouble, of course, as a child, you have to advocate for yourself. And that first step is probably some excuses, right? It wasn't me, or I knocked it over and it broke, but it was where it was sticking out on that table, and I had to really get to that. I had to get to the front door fast because I had to get to school. So the excuses, right? First the excuses come. But then if you continue getting in trouble so much that you have to continually be in this situation of advocating for yourself in whatever situation it is, you realize these excuses don't cut it. And you start to recognize naturally, organically, because we are storytelling animals, as Jonathan Gottschall said, I believe, that you start to actually create stories, right? So that first feedback of the excuses is, no excuses, Matthew, you broke it. And the next step is you not only have the excuse, but you start to look at the bigger picture, right? So you look at all the factors and you start to talk about what? Reasons, right? The reason was, I'm not saying that it was your fault, Mum, for putting that there. It's just, it was there, right? So the reasons for the things being there and getting to this, going to school. But then you go through these experiences again and again and again and again, to me at least. And then you start to recognize that if you approach it from a slightly different perspective, you're able to reduce some of the anger of the parents, right? And so that example, perhaps it's like, Mum, I know that you're trying to help get us out of the house in the morning, and I've heard you say that, and I've been rushing to do that, and in my rush this morning, I bumped into the vase, whatever it was, and it broke, and I'm so sorry, and I'll be more careful in the future. So this setting the scene, bringing other characters, my mother into it, talking about what she wants, her desires, her objectives, my desires, objectives to help with that. And then this mistake that happened and the learning from that mistake. And that suddenly sparked this realization that it was the beginning and the birth of this interest and obsession with storytelling, which wasn't explicit at that point. I wasn't sitting around analyzing my communication style at 8 years old or whatever it was, right? But I did get in trouble. And one of the reasons why I got in a lot of trouble was what the current terminology seems to have landed on is I have some neurodiversity stuff going on, ADHD, dyslexia. And you add that to the experience of moving around a lot and starting again, and all kind of into this perfect storm. So there's one of these stories I ended up having to tell was when I was probably about 10 years old, 9, 10, pretty young, and we had a spelling test at school. And I don't know how much you know about dyslexia, but spelling isn't exactly the strong point for dyslexic. And I had the spelling test, and I had taken a book in, a little Ladybird spelling book, to help me with a few of the more complicated words. So a few of the more complicated words I cheated on, but I got away with it. And then we had a multiplication test coming up, memorizing multiplication tables. You think the spelling's hard for dyslexics? Try memorizing numbers, sequences of arbitrary numbers. I have to find a reason in something to be able to believe in it, right? What's the story behind these numbers? And I tried the same technique again. This time I got caught. I got in trouble. My parents got dragged into it. But it was because I wasn't confident. I was worried. I was scared. I saw it as being this big, important test that I had to focus on. And it fed into this troublemaking. So I got in trouble, but a big part of that was these neurodiverse experiences that I was having. And they spilled out to the playground, right? They spilled out to bad decisions in the playground or outside of school with ADHD in particular, risky behavior, right? Taking risks, which has a huge amount of benefits in the right context, right? But in the wrong context, especially as you're a child growing up and experimenting and making, pushing the boundaries of reality, you can find yourself in some trouble. So all this moving around, all this neurodiversity, all these, from excuses into stories. And I still remember when I got my results for my A levels, they're called in England, A levels, and there's half an A levels called an AS level. I didn't do particularly well. And you need so many points from your A levels to get into your university of choice. And I remember driving to school, getting my letter, sitting down with my mum in the car park, reading the letter, and her reaction, she starts crying. You're not going to get into Canterbury. That's where you want to go. And that's like probably the best option. And I said, Mum, we'll figure it out. We'll figure it out. And this became this thread for me, the combination of stories and figuring out and creating a reality with stories. So we get home. In those days, we didn't have a cell phone. I actually did have an old Motorola brick cell phone, but that's a whole different story. But we didn't actually have phones you would use on a daily basis, apart from at home. So get home, made the call to the university, explained the situation, and they said, "Oh, that's okay, no worries. We have a foundation year for situations like this. They're primarily for returning mature students and international students, get everybody up to the same level. But you can absolutely do the course. It's an extra year, and so it becomes a 4-year degree as opposed to a 3-year degree. So I was signed up to do physics. Think about spelling, think about mathematics and the challenges there. I was signed up to do physics. I wanted to be an astronomer. I wanted to be an astronaut. That was what did you want to be when you were 5 years old? But astronomy, passionate about that. I had a telescope I saved up for, Carl Sagan's Cosmos. Read that at 14, changed my perspective, really helped crystallize my perspective on reality. And I wanted to be a physicist. And so I started this foundation year, and in the foundation year, you do some physics, you do some maths, you do some computer systems engineering, computer science, programming, all these little pieces from the various courses that management science all feed into getting you up to the appropriate level, right? And I was in these physics labs, and I was, like, this is not what I'm going to be able. This is not going to be successful for me. I went to my tutor, and I changed to computer systems engineering. Same experience. And I changed to computer science. Same experience. Now I'm at the end of my tether. I'm not seeing myself setting up for success. And at the last moment, Dr. Ian Utting, my tutor at the time, said, go to the business school, have a conversation with them, because there's a new course they're launching next year that I think you might be interested in. I knew that I was working at Intel on the holidays and all this good stuff. Computer science with business administration. And I managed to make it through university with that. But through all of these moments, it was taking control of the story. It was being proactive, and it was having conversations with people like Ian, later with Rich, when I got that Intel job. It's these moments where being able to tell a story can have a profound impact on your life. And you have got stories like this in your life that you can use to make points, right, in your job, in your business, for your company, whether you're starting out on the ground floor or you are a true, tested old hand who's looking to take things to the next level. Everybody between employee, owner, founder, you name it. You can use stories at each one of these moments because you're tapping into this power. Now, tapping into this power also means you need to know how to tap into the power. So if you kind of think through some of the elements of what storytelling is, it's interesting, right? It's going to, you want to lean in, you want to listen to it, so you want to make sure your stories are interesting. How do I do that? I hear this, tell stories. There's Annette Simmons wrote a book on storytelling and business, and there's some good stuff in there, but I do take issue with one of the things that she says when she says, she's telling this example of an employee who's sending insensitive communications, and she says, instead of confronting them head on, tell them a story about about somebody you used to work with. You could do this in a casual setting. It doesn't have to be addressing anything specific, right? You're doing it to kind of be subtle. And you tell this story about somebody who is sending insensitive communications and they lost it. So do that, she says. Okay, I agree up to this point. The problem is, how do you do that? What story do you tell? How do you find that story? I did say you'll have a bunch of stories in your past that could be useful. You might spend some time thinking through those stories, jotting them down in your favorite notebook of choice, paper, on the computer, OneNote, Evernote, whatever it happens to be. Or every time you need a story, you take the time in advance to spend a bit of time thinking through those experiences, what it could be. So that is definitely a first step. But how do you tell the story? Where do you start? What do you do in the middle? What do you do at the end? I love you, Aristotle. Absolutely. One of Aristotle's frameworks we've mashed up with a couple others, including the South Park framework, one of ours, to create a way to rapidly put stories together. Okay? I love you, Aristotle, but beginning, middle, and end, not really giving me much to work with there. What happened at the beginning of the story, then what happened at the end. I want you to think about people. What does the person in your story, you, somebody else, what do they want, right? More effective communication in the office, keeping their job because they get along well with their fellow employees. What's the difficulty in the situation? They didn't realize that their emails were rubbing people the wrong way. And so this person got rubbed the wrong way, this person got rubbed the wrong way. And their boss called them in to have the conversation, and now we get towards the end, right? And I was working with my youngest last night on a graphic novel project he's got for school, and he has got these 8 sort of pages that they've got to do. And what I said to him was, a good way to think about this from a weight perspective is 2 of those at the beginning for the beginning, 2 of them at the end for the end, and then take the remaining 4 and have that be the middle, where the bulk of the stuff, the action happens, right? And we talked about things like, what do people in the story want? What do they need to do? Who else is involved? What stands in their way? What do they do to get around or through that problem? What do they learn as a part of the experience? What do they take away? What are the outcomes? How do they solve all of these things, right? And so thinking about it like that, from a weight perspective, like 2, 4, 2, if you want. So one of the biggest problems I see is the problem I ran into when I got offered the chief storyteller role back in 2012 for one of Microsoft's business divisions. And that trap I call the Hollywood trap. It's more than just Hollywood. It includes in particular the hero's journey. But I call it the Hollywood trap. One of the reasons I call it the Hollywood trap is there's a lot of service providers who will offer you storytelling services for things like presentations, how to position yourself, how to do the opening of the presentation, how to learn from the drama of movies. I heard an example the other day that was in the book evades me right now, but it was triumph versus tragedy. The triumphs, what were the tragedies? Look to Hollywood for these ideas. They talk about the Titanic or Pulp Fiction, whatever the movie happens to be. And that's great for entertainment, right? And human beings created entertainment storytelling, but not because it's the beginning, not because it's the source, not because it's that source, that vein of energy that you tap into. It's those exist because of that vein of energy. And that vein of energy is because how we put ourselves, see ourselves, put ourselves in our world, and how we then communicate about that. And the stories that we tell, the stories that we've always told, the stories that get remembered are the ones that are the most effective. The ones that are most effective are interesting, they're entertaining, they have questions that make you wonder. They have answers to those questions. They have things you can learn about places and things that you never ever dreamed about. Really fascinating, interesting stuff. And we figured out we could create these just for fun as well. And whether it was cave paintings or the court jester or the early novel or a film or a TV show, there's a wonderful industry, multiple industries globally that channel into this, different formats as well, graphic novels we mentioned already today. So they're great, they're interesting, we lean in. We want to use that, we want to tap into that energy for business. But if you start looking at Hollywood, you'll spend hours being engrossed in that, right? Dragged into it. It's entertaining, but it fails to meet the business objectives. I did this Hollywood training back at that kind of time frame, and it talked about some of the different types of movies. And Flipping the Floor was one that it talked about, and it had the example, a couple of examples, Finding Nemo and Knocked Up. And Flipping the Floor was one of the types, and they had some other types, but I can't even remember off the top of my head. I know tragedy was in there, but it's not to do with business storytelling. So the fit was, well, how do I use this? And I remember sitting there and how would I use the Flipping the Floor? And I think about the presentation we were working on, and well, do we want to talk about, most companies have anxiety about talking about their weaknesses and mistakes. I get it. Worry that it'll undermine your credibility. Actually, it can build your credibility by showing that you are able to learn and develop and grow and have vulnerability, and that builds empathy and connection. But in general, we're all scared about sharing our flaws, okay? So it's Flipping the Floor, how would we use this for this? And all this time I end up spending thinking through. And then I look at the next one, it's like, could we use this one? Could we use this one? The Hollywood trap. We're trying to reverse engineer Hollywood or the hero's journey into a way that works for business. And people have done some pretty good efforts of that. Park Howell, he's got a nice mapping of business to the hero's journey. But it's still this concept of the hero's journey. And it's not always a hero's journey or even a central character's journey. There's the hero's journey, specifically, the idea of the hero is going from being this in a place of weakness or of lacking to a place of strength and value. So if you look at Star Wars, right? Luke is a farmhand at the beginning, he's a Jedi Knight at the end. Wow, I wish I could hold like lightsabers to my hand, but I can't unless I reach over and grab one, right? That is the first one that was in that movie. So I have a lot of respect for movies, don't get me wrong. Immense amount of joy in all of that. For business, you want to be thinking about that vein of power and how do I tap into that vein of power? And that's what we spend all of our time doing. So I want to encourage you to ask questions, and I'll do my best here as we go through to answer, and then we can save some for the end. You say the Hollywood trap, but I'm not quite following why you not like it. Is it Okay, so yes, I do like entertainment storytelling, don't get me wrong. I also like the science and neuroscience of storytelling and the hormones that are involved, how we trigger hormones, positive and negative, in our communications. But for me, it's really the trap is about the allure. Yeah, and there are some contexts, like if you're building out a presentation, there's some value in that. And here's a story actually. So we were in the running for a deal, 2018, I think it was, and the team was looking to get their sales team better at storytelling because they recognized this vein of power, and it was down to two potential partners for this project: us, Go Narrative, and there was this other company that were filled with ex-actors, and some of them did writing and directing, some of them did theater, some of them had done movie work or TV work. And the potential client of ours, who actually I've known for a long time, Rob, ended up, he had his priorities for the project were to create programs. We'd have his team go through it, have some checkpoints, and get them skilled up, get them the tools, give them the practice, and come out of it doing much better, right? And our approach included getting down to the basics, thinking about things like, what do people want? How do you find a story or an anecdote that might work? What should you say first, right? How should you kick things off? What do you need to make sure you include at the end, etc., etc., and using our frameworks, and then practice. The other potential partner had a curriculum, and it was all about presenting, because there seemed to be a pretty strong connection. Presenting, customer conversations, connect those dots. If we get good at this stuff, we can connect them. They can be great at these conversations. I met up with Rob this summer, and I said to Rob, I was thinking about that project where you chose that other vendor, other partner. I don't like the word vendor. Especially not the value the sort of value we're talking about. And how did that go, by the way? He rolls his eyes and says something to the effect of, I know what you're going to say, and we should have hired you. And I was like, well, thank you, Rob. And then I said, let me guess. After you had everybody go through the curriculum, a couple of things happened. Number one, there were a few people that really took it to heart and absorbed it and started applying it, and to this day still apply it, because they probably really loved it. They probably just enjoyed the process, that this was something that they liked geeking out on. Like I like geeking out on stories, right? And another thing I think happened was the majority of the team did okay in the practice, and then maybe used it a little bit, but it didn't stick. And then after 6 months, they were back at square one. He starts nodding. That's exactly what it was. And I said, do you know why that was? And he goes, why? I said, because it wasn't the right type of storytelling. It wasn't the right type of coaching. It wasn't applying the fundamentals of what story is and the telling of those stories to your business context. And because of that, it didn't make sense. They didn't have time to learn to be experts, just like you don't have the time to learn to be an expert. And it didn't stick. And he continues nodding. Yep, that's exactly it. So really great example there of the risks of who you choose to work with. And like I said, there was a few people in there where it made sense. And you could have a situation where you have an executive on your team. Maybe you're the CEO and you're nurturing a new potential bench CMO, and there's an event coming up, and you want to help them take their presentation skills to the next level, and their storytelling to the next level, and you bring in a vendor that helps with that for that presentation, and it helps them. And the presentation's great, and they get great scores, and the audience absorb it, love it. And then that CMO maybe retains that information or maybe doesn't, but the event was successful, so that's okay. And that's okay, right? But if you want your team to really tap into this vein of power and have it always there, right? Like teaching your child to walk, right? Once they've got it, and they can build on that, and they can build on that, and they can practice it. They've got the basics down. And that's how I want to help you. That's how Go Narrative helps our clients. That is, we can get you doing it really, really quickly and benefit from that and keep benefiting from it. And if you want to go deeper, we can help with that. We can help you build the muscle. We can help you integrate it more and more into your business as well. So there's a spectrum of these things, and solving problems in business with what I call storytelling for action are things like your brand storytelling, your investor engagement, sales conversations that impact your sales conversions, employee engagement and training, that's another big one, partnership development, content strategy, evolution, strategic alignment within your organization. And that could be a small company that has an aligned vision and beautiful sequential execution, or it could be aligning internal teams in a corporation with a shared view and a shared story that integrates the different parts of the organization. Because stories include multiple characters, right? And just like you put yourself into the story of your life every day, right now, you got supporting actors. You got Matthew. I'm a supporting actor for you, your family, your friends, right? And then there's allies and there's enemies, unfortunately, as well in life. And your organization includes all sorts of stakeholders are characters. And so when you think about your organization, think about involving in the process, it's really important to start at the beginning, start with the intent of doing that integration. We love doing workshops to help with that. So if we take like brand storytelling, because I think in tech in particular, we work with a lot of sort of 50 to 200 size organizations in tech, sort of small to medium enterprise, and we do a lot of work there. We do some enterprise work as well, and we do some startup work, love working with startups. But if you think about tech specific storytelling in that kind of space, and it's a good place to start to latch onto. Tech narratives are often pretty complicated, or at least they can feel pretty complicated. A lot of people involved, there's a lot of technologies involved, there's often a lot of history with each of these technologies, and it can be really overwhelming. And you can go down into all these little rat holes, right? And often all these different directions if you don't have the structure to drive to that action. And that can ultimately lead to disconnected messages hitting the market. And a brand isn't just a logo. Yes, logos are involved in brand. A brand isn't a color. A brand isn't even a story. A brand is an impression in people's minds about what your company is as a supporting actor in their life, in their business. That really bears thinking about, right? And that means if you're intentional about what you put out into the world, that impression that people are going to get into their minds about your brand, your company, brand is like the personality or the character of the company, right? What kind of person is this? What kind of company is this, right? Do I like working with this person? Do I like working with this company? So when you're intentional about what you put out, and when I say put out, I mean everything from, yes, your messages that you put out, yes, your logo and the colors you choose, but also the products, the community engagements you may or may not choose to do, your stance on things like environmental issues, and What else could we have in terms of what you put out into the world? How you respond to customer criticism, partner criticism, market criticism? How do you manage these things? All of these add to what people's impression is in their mind about your brand. And if you release a cutting edge product, right? Oh, this is so amazing. But you struggle to convey what its benefits are, you're putting it out into the market, and you're struggling to convey its benefits, it's just going to seem like another gadget. I mean, if we take lightsabers, for example, all the different lightsabers. So this was Anakin's that was given to Luke. So I guess this was before he became Darth Vader. Was it? No, was it? I think it was what Obi-Wan Kenobi gathered after his duel with Vader, Anakin turning into Vader. And so there's this lightsaber. There's, fast forward to today, you got Rey's lightsaber, which is kind of built out of a part of her staff, and it's yellow and it kind of crackles, right? And then each one of these Jedi have a style, have a sword fighting style. But if you just look at the thing itself, you're like, well, it's got a handle, it's got a switch, and it's got a blade that comes out of it, right? And if you're not interested in these, you may not be interested in these. You might be, oh, what's he talking about lightsabers? He's such a dork. Yes, he is. But that situation, you're just going to be seeing all lightsabers is pretty much the same thing. And the same will go for your product. When you've got a tech product, if you're not really clear in what you're putting out, if you struggle with that, then you're going to struggle with getting a consistent idea in people's minds about what your brand is. And so how do we solve this problem? How would you solve this problem of consistency, right? One of the things that companies do is they do positioning frameworks, right? We actually do help with those. I think brand positioning is incredibly important. You've got all of these products and these capabilities and who you are as a company, and your customer is a certain type of person or company that buys from you, and they're experiencing in their lives, how do you fit with that, right? So thinking about their pains, their objectives, whatever it is that kind of makes that persona up to be who they are, and then what do we do, what do we help with to help with that? It's kind of like, I had to turn it on. I had to turn it on. So what is that fit, right? And that's position. That's great. Okay. So, because it means we're going to be consistent in how we talk about the bits, right? What do we do above that? If we're thinking about tapping into this vein of story, what we need to do is we need to have a big story that includes these positioning bits. It includes what our vision is. It includes our mission, right? But this integrated big story, narrative, brand narrative, or strategic narrative. And when you build that, it gives everybody in your company something to latch onto. It's their way of connecting with that vein of power in an appropriate way, right? It shares the picture of the world, the challenges that are in the world, in the market that you're targeting. It gives you the reasons to believe. It shares the problems of that market, what people are trying to do to get ahead in this context of the world and the challenges. It includes change, right? The pressures on these people you're talking about who are trying to make it through and have a better experience, whatever that happens to be. And then there's the innovation, the thing you do with your offering that helps with that. It's promised, the lightsaber that they can take and go and be the Jedi that you know that they can be, even if they start as that lowly farm boy. See, I do make movie references. I don't hate Hollywood completely. I just hate the fact that people go to it to tap into this vein of power of story, which is just the wrong thing to do. Strategic narrative gets all of that integrated into an easy to consume story because it resonates. with how we view the world, how we put ourselves in the world, how we communicate to the world, right? And when you have that strategic narrative, you can then ensure that not only do you have the bits and pieces of your positioning to talk about the right bits and pieces, but you have this compelling story, the reason to believe, everything from the emotional state to the facts, all woven together into this beautiful integrated piece. And that's some of our favorite work. It can be quite detailed and quite involved, and sometimes you need to move really quickly, right? Sometimes you want to figure out what story you should be telling now. What story should you be focusing on right now? What is it about where you are and where your company is that you need to be talking about right now? And you might need to get there quickly, right? You could have an investor meeting coming up. You could have just taken responsibility for a brand new big event that your company's going to be involved in. And so you want to rapidly put something together. And if you go heads down, no question in my mind, and you tap into the various resources, including like our blog and our book, the Storytelling for Action Playbook, and you knuckle down, you can come up with something. The problem is with that approach is you can trip up over things like over focusing in one area, suffering from not seeing the wood for the trees, the curse of knowledge, being too inward gazing, not thinking enough about your audience or the investors that you're speaking to, whoever it happens to be, and potentially disconnected from the other marketing, the other messages that you're putting out into the market, even what your product's name is. Maybe there's a clash. The presentation you come up with clashes with that. So how can you approach things in a way that are going to give you that consistency in a way that's as rapid as possible? So I've got something, let me share this with you. So I'm so excited. This is going to change the business world forever. We at Go Narrative have figured out the 7 types of business story. I had a question the other day from a prospect that we're having a conversation with, somebody that we're hoping to help. And they said, is this based on the seven types of story for entertainment? Because there is one of those models. There's also the hero's journey model. There's the 3 types of story, which sort of summarizes things at a higher level. But the 7 types of story, funny story, is last December when I was trying to figure out how do we come up with something that people can get through faster, right? To really just start tapping into this vein of power and to do it in a way that's going to integrate across their business, move their business forward. How am I going to do that? And I decided I was going to take a break from thinking about the business stuff. And so I went and I wallowed in particular, the 7 types of story. And Charles Booker, I believe, came up with those. And so I was doing my sketching out, my whiteboarding, I was mapping these different stories out and thinking about business. And I did looking at the 3 types story, go further and further and further down this rabbit hole. And I was searching out there. Has anybody done this? Has anybody figured this out? They haven't figured out. There's no 7 types of story for business. There's nothing that kind of aggregates these things together in enough detail to help ongoing. There's some very high level, and then there's the Hollywood stuff, but there's nothing really serving this purpose. So I dug into it and I dug into it and I dug into it. And I ideated and I brainstormed and I bounced ideas off both. And I eventually figured it out. And so I figured out the 7 types of business story. So there's a story that you should be telling right now, and it's one of these types. And then I created an assessment, like a personality assessment for a business that figures out which one of these stories it is. And this, by the way, this assessment is 14 questions, 10 minutes of your time, nothing about storytelling. All questions about your business, what you're dealing with, the challenges and all this good stuff, right? type of company or how you view yourself. And the assessment then gives you the story type. And so here we have an example: the challenge, the pivot, the catalyst, innovation, improving experiences, changing perceptions, and growth mindset. Oh, I look at those. I say them all the time, know them all off the top of my head. You've got these story types. You've got this assessment that figure it out and figure out which one of these story types you should be telling right now. So it might be that it's the challenge, and you're going to use this filter, this lens. All the stories you're telling right now be about challenges, okay? And I would encourage you in that situation, and all these story types, to be honest, but the challenge, we're dealing with a challenge. What is that challenge? Look at the stories you can tell, the authentic stories about what your business is going through, and don't shy away from that. But that's something I'll just kind of table that for a second. The flow of these is a flow. So change gets forced on us, right? We talked about this earlier. Change gets forced on us, and that creates challenges. And those challenges we then have to deal with, and then we learn from those challenges, and we forge new paths to create better experiences. And then we have to make sure the world understands this. And if we're really good at this type of stuff, we've got this growth mindset, this way of asking questions and thinking about learning, that then creates new opportunities because it forces change on the world, that creates new challenges. So yes, there are companies that find themselves stepping through these steps. There are companies that tend to spend most of their time in one area, especially when you're established, right? So you take this assessment today, it might vary from 6 months from now. But remember, this is about getting you telling the right stories right now. And then there's an opportunity to go further if that makes sense for you. So you take the assessment, and it figures out which one of these areas that you should be focusing on. And of course, there's resources that we have to do that, to help with that. You could also bounce around a little bit in these. So you could be dealing with a challenge right now of an executive who said something terrible on social media or in the press, on a news show. You get the idea, right? And it's a challenge that you're dealing with. And you then, after you figuring out how to solve this challenge, you don't need to change direction necessarily. You've got the moral framework as a company to say this executive shouldn't have done this. You need to work to change perceptions in the marketplace about your company, right? This isn't, this person is not representative of who you are, and taking your audience on the journey to do that. But likewise, you could be changing direction. It maybe didn't come from a challenge. It maybe came from an opportunity, and you're shifting and changing direction. And that it was all because of this new hire you had, who is a customer service. Oh, better than that, you hired my friend Chet Hyken, who is all about customer experience. And he helped you identify what some opportunities were to change direction on your customer experience. And then after you've worked to figure out what that is, you're then improving experiences. And now you find yourself in the improving experiences story type 6 months later, telling that story, or 3 months later, right? So there are ways of bouncing around here. So this year for Go Narrative, so we tend to be in the catalyst space. Catalyst is about speeding things up with existing resources, right? It's, if you think about it from a chemical reaction, it's you've got the liquids, you've got the suspensions, you've got the heat, you've got all the things you need, and then you introduce a catalyst and it speeds things up. And the catalyst is that because of the lived and learned experiences, like all of the storytelling work I've done is the reason why we can help you. Okay, so we're generally in that spot, and a lot of consultancies and agencies are in that spot. Okay, this year for us, after that, this last December when I was talking about, I recognized the market wasn't doing particularly well at the time in tech, and tech are our clients, right? It was a challenge. But we rapidly moved into this idea of the pivot and changing direction by bringing this new, more tactical option onto the table for business technology folks around the world. And it was about improving experiences, right? But to do that, we had to do innovation. And by innovating, we were able to then build something that fed that change of direction, that enabled us to change perceptions. So I just bounced around all of this. If I broke the year up into components, there would be a couple months here, a couple months here, a couple months here. And as you get better at storytelling, you can start to get more dynamic in this, but you don't have to. All you have to do is take the assessment, find out your type, and start using that type today, okay? And every time you take this assessment, we will assess your relative weighting based on our logic, and that will give you what we call the unique story fingerprint. If you go through the assessment and book time to speak with us, and I'm the principal consultant who's currently delivering these, but some of our team are going to start doing it soon. Like I said, it's an offering we developed this year to get you this fantastic power, tap into this vein of power as quickly as possible. When you take it, you'll get and you book some time with us, we will share this with you. This is your story report. It's got your story fingerprint, shows that relative weighting, gives you an idea of the context of what you're going through in the story types, and then strongly encourages you to focus on, in this case, improving experiences. And this company are a consultancy, came from agency, shifted into a consultancy because they wanted to approach things differently, because they've got this idea about the customer experience that they want to do a better job. They want to help people. And for them, this is a change of direction. So their supporting story type in this case is the pivot. You can see those two pop, right, in the fingerprint, and you can see the catalyst pop in the fingerprint. And over time, as they achieve their goal of improving experiences and delivering this product and get everything in place to deliver this offering, these two elements could shrink, right, and find that the catalyst is a strong story to be telling again. But right now, I'm encouraging them to focus on improving experiences. Talk about that. Tap into that. Use this filter. Use this filter to search for stories to tell, to find stories to tell. And by doing so, you are going to simplify your storytelling. What story should I tell? It's going to help you find that. How should I tell it? Here's the beauty. Because you're using it to tap into existing stories, you are repeating those stories, you're practicing those stories. You don't have to think about the structure of them. If you want to, and you want to do up your game, of course, there's tools like this or working with us that can help you with that. But the point being is you use this lens on all of your communications internally as well, right? We're talking about improving experiences with my leadership team, with their teams, right? This is how, with our investors, this is how we're approaching this now. And this is requiring a change of direction, pivot, for example. It's all about improving experiences. Speaking to our partners, right? We need you to do this thing because it's about improving experiences. So you figure out the story to tell in that context, but you don't even need to think about this as being about storytelling. This is about clarifying your communications. It's all rooted in storytelling and all the stories and experiences we've had with our clients over the past 7 years. But ultimately, this is giving you the tools to tap into that vein of storytelling power without learning Hollywood, without learning the hero's journey, without learning to tell a story. That is the amazing power of this and why I am so excited. And we have a 6-week program. It would be remiss of me not to share this with you, but it is a 6-week program that delivers you, let me pull this up, is a 6-week program which delivers you your story type, right? You get that from the assessment, with your fingerprint, your supporting story type, how it applies to your business, so we tailor it for you once you go through the program. Story guide, which then puts all of that together, and that, we're coming to the top of the hour, so but the story guide goes into all that customization, and then the tactical narrative, 1-page narrative of your story that you should be telling right now. And it's a 6-week program. So we meet every week. We get 1 to 3 leaders in a room, and we adapt to that. 5 is too many cooks in the kitchen. And we go through. We draft out the story guide, we draft out the narrative, and you get better and more focused in all of your storytelling, all your communication, all your messaging, all your brand is putting out to the world and putting into people's heads. You get crisper, you get more focused. And then if it makes sense, you can talk about what this idea of a strategic narrative is and building out an even more powerful, longer term story that's going to last for a couple of years. This is going to get you what you need to take everything to the next level with how the market is perceiving you, what your customers think of you, what your investors believe in, what your partners believe in and support, and ultimately the experiences that you're delivering to your customers. So that is what I'm so excited about. And there's one simple action for you to go and take. Let's go take the assessment. And we do ask for your email. We do not sell your data. We ask for your email so that we can not only give you your story type straight away when you finish it on the screen, but send you the 7 days of tips as well, and then additional support beyond that. So that's why we ask for email. You will get value out of that. I guarantee it. That's going to make that trade absolutely worthwhile. Starting with your story type today, you will actually get better at all the stories you tell. I'm so excited for you. So do that. That's what you got to jump into. And I'm so excited to hear back from you and for you to book that meeting so that I can share with you that next click down. Have a great day and just tell stories for action. It's all about action. It's about driving your business forward. Thank you.